Good morning, I'm Tamara Shoemaker. 20 years ago, I was a counselor at Spruce Lake Wilderness Camp in Pennsylvania. And every week, one of our most anticipated activities was a camp-wide game that we played called Mission Impossible, which was essentially a ramped-up version of hide-and-go-seek in the dark. And the organizers would really get into it. So each week, they would introduce the game to the campers in a fun but intense skit in the pavilion, background music, Mission Impossible, dun, 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 dun. Anyway, then each counselor was given a piece of paper with their tent group's mission on it. So the mission that summer involved each tent group making their way through the woods at night to 3 different checkpoints where they would collect an item related to the camp theme for the summer. During the summer of 2001, our camp theme was living water. So we had to carry 3 cups of water, one from each checkpoint through the dark woods. And then when our mission was finished or fulfilled, each tent group would then return to the pavilion. But they couldn't be caught. The camp staff, excluding the counselors who were with their tent groups, were the seekers. And if they pinpointed any wandering tent groups in the woods, they would send them back to square one, where the group would have to begin all over again. And the first group back to the pavilion with 3 full cups of water won the game. Of course, that involved all sorts of risks, like stumbling in the darkness and spilling your cup of water and then having to go back and refill it and so forth. So anyway, the game was a long-standing tradition. Campers actually arrived at camp having packed clothing especially for this game to wear for it, mostly camouflage, and many campers would dig out ash from their fire pits at their tents and coat their faces or any, exposed skin that might shine in the light of a powerful spotlight from the enemy, right? So you guys, I like indoor activities. I like cleanliness. I like calm, non-adrenaline producing activities like crocheting or playing Scrabble or watching a movie occasionally, right? I like the absence of spiders or insects in my immediate vicinity. So why was I a wilderness camp counselor? I don't know. I guess somewhere deeply, deeply, deeply hidden inside of me was a form of enjoyment for this type of game. So anyway, one particular week I was leading my tent group of 10 girls and a counselor in training along with us through the dark black woods. And to get to our checkpoint, we had to cross over the main driveway that cut through the camp, which was usually crawling with the enemy, and lots and lots and lots of bright lights. So we weren't too far away from that driveway. I could hear the shouts of the staff as they were calling to each other and trying to find other groups. My girls were super well behaved. They would only talk in whispers if they had to talk at all. No one could see very well. The trees were just like these black cylindrical shapes rising above our heads. And now and then we'd stumble over vines or a loose patch of gravel or dirt. So we were trying to be super careful. But we found the main driveway and we had to wait until all was clear. And I whispered to my girls to hunker down and wait. And as the camp truck lumbered by with a big spotlight attached to its roof, it would shine in the woods and kind of sweep the woods. So we had to hide really well. Anyway, it passed, and then another car came up the other way, again with flashlights, and then that disappeared. And so I told my girls in that clear space of time to book it across the road. And I could already hear another car coming, so I knew we didn't have much time. It hadn't yet appeared, though. So we ran. I was in the lead, but feeling my responsibility as the counselor and the one in charge of the group, I was running while looking over my shoulder, probably not the smartest thing in the world to do. But I looked over my shoulder to make sure my girls were all there and safe, and the rock came out of nowhere. With the darkness almost complete, I couldn't see the small boulders at my feet. I could only kind of see against the sky, the background of the starlit sky. So my leg hit it. I went flying face first into the ground with my feet in the air. My shin immediately let me know that I wasn't just suffering from loss of dignity, right? I carried a flashlight with me just in case of emergencies. So, I kind of covered the light with my hand so that it wouldn't be super obvious. And I checked out the damage. There was a torn strip of skin from my knee clear down to my ankle, lots and lots of blood already flowing down and dripping onto the forest floor. I was 21 at the time, so I wrote it off as a flesh wound. I'd be all right. If I'd been doing this now when I'm 41, I don't know if my reaction might have been a little bit different. But anyway, I was 21. Nothing could hurt me. Whatever. My girls were a little concerned about me, and so we had a really quickly whispered conference about whether I should head up to the pavilion as I sent my girls on with the counselor in training. But before we could decide, the car that I'd heard coming appeared on the road. Get down! So I told everybody to get down. We all hunkered down behind trees on the forest floor. Somewhat ironically, the boulder that I'd tripped over that had almost thrown me for a literal loop was the same boulder that also kept me sheltered from the spotlight that was shining into the woods right over us. And I huddled behind it. I was safe in its black shadow, and we waited until the car bypassed us before I told the girls to continue on. And I actually can't remember if I did end up going to the pavilion for first aid or if I went on to finish the mission with them. That's not important. The boulder is the important part of this story illustration. In Romans chapter 9, verses 30 to 33, Paul says, "What then shall we say? That the Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have obtained it, a righteousness that is by faith? But Israel, who pursued a righteousness, has not attained it. Why not? Because they pursued it not by faith, but as if it were by works. They stumbled over the stumbling stone. As it is written, see, I lay in Zion a stone that causes men to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. And the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame." So why would God place a stumbling stone in anyone's pathway? It seems to me that, it's all centered around the idea of faith. Hebrews 11:6 says, "And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." So in the dark woods where I couldn't see anything at all, I was straining every nerve, right? Every last one I possessed to figure out how to navigate through the trees without getting caught. I was relying on my own senses. I was trusting my own judgments. And I messed up. In my fear of discovery by the enemy, I lost track of my mission and I tripped. But this is actually pretty good. On the flip side of the scenario, that same rock that tripped me up also protected me from my enemy. As I huddled in its protection on the far side of the boulder, I couldn't be seen. "When my glory passes by," says God to Moses one day, "I will put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by." Exodus 33:22. "I will hide you. I will hide you under my own hand. You are protected in the cleft of the rock, covered there with my hand." Psalm 91:1 and 2 says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." And then down in Psalm 91:11, it continues, "For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Normally, we don't get to see, right? To see those angels with our physical eyes. Faith tells us that they're there. Faith tells us that the Lord is our refuge and our fortress. Faith keeps us from striking our foot against a stone, not works. All the good deeds, the right intentions, the striving and the trying in the world will not keep us from that stumbling stone. Faith leads us around it, because that's when we stop trusting our own faulty judgments, right? And allow the Lord's guidance to navigate our path. So heading back to Romans chapter 9, Paul is pointing out the difference between walking by faith and walking by works. When we walk in the confidence of our works, we fall flat on our faces, because y'all, I don't know about you, but I'm night blind, obviously. That boulder leaped out from nowhere, and the next thing you know, I was holding my wounds and wishing I'd paid better attention. Faith kept me behind the rock as the spotlight swept over me. I felt fully exposed. I felt unprotected, but for the rock where I hid in its cleft. So the enemy moved on. The enemy didn't find me. The only thing the enemy found as they swept the woods was a rock that fronted me, that stood between me and the enemy. And isn't that just like Jesus? 1 Peter 5:8-9 says, "Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kinds of sufferings." It's a whole lot easier to stand firm when you've got a rock to stand firm on, when you've got a rock to stand between you and the enemy. The thing is, that rock without faith is a stumbling stone. With faith, it becomes our protection. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, but with faith, He hides us in the cleft of the rock and covers us with His hand. So these are dark days, It's hard to have faith. All we can see is the darkness. All we can hear is what feels like taunting laughter from our enemies. How to describe faith? Faith is simultaneously letting go, but also rooting in. Faith is simultaneously releasing our control and letting God have that control. Our faith is all situated around that rock. Do we stumble over it or do we hide in it? There's a difference. And we actually have the choice. He gives us that choice. So that's what I had for today. We finished up Romans chapter 9. I'll start in on Romans chapter 10 tomorrow. We're getting close to the end, but still got a few good chapters to go. See you then.